We're gonna make some biscuits this morning. This is the only way I can really hold my camera, so you won't be able to see me. You need a good mixing bowl. So I like this one because my pastry cutter gets down in here and it's light and I can move it. You'll need 2 cups of all-purpose flour. I use King Arthur flour. It's employee owned, so I like that. And they are really consistent with the protein content in the flour, and I like it. I weigh my flour. 2 cups. If I scoop out of my flour container and put it into a measuring cup, I always end up with too much flour. 2 cups of flour is 240 grams. So I weigh just about every time I make anything with flour, I weigh it. Then next, we are going to put a tablespoon of baking powder. So, some baking powder. I just shake it up a little bit. And we're going to do 1 tablespoon. We're going to do 1 1/4 teaspoon salt. So we're going to do 1 1/4. And then 1/4 teaspoon baking soda. I use my pastry blender and I just mix that up. My pastry blender broke. The top of it broke. So Troy took a piece of, this is bamboo, like just a little piece of bamboo, and made me a handle. I like it. Okay, the next thing you want to do is add butter. The butter, I also weigh it. It is about 82 grams, 85 grams, or 6 tablespoons. And I just cut it up. You want to use really cold butter. And I just kind of cut it up so it's easier to use my pastry cutter with. These are going to be the best biscuits. It took me years to find a biscuit recipe that I liked. I like a flaky biscuit, like a layered biscuit. Some biscuits are crumbly, some, I don't like them. I wanted to be able to make a layered biscuit. And you can put as many layers in it as you like. You don't have to put any in there if you don't want to. But I like it. And it's really easy once you get the hang of it. I do go by my recipe. You know, I don't just put so much in there and until it looks right. I don't do that. All right, so now take your pastry cutter. You can do this with a fork if you don't have a pastry cutter, but I think it would take forever. You just chop the butter up in it. You want them all to be about pea-size pieces. You just want to incorporate it into it. And just mix it up. Make sure it's all good and crumbled up. Now today, I'm also going to make some biscuits. I'm going to use this same recipe, except I am going to use some garlic butter that I made instead of this butter. And I'm gonna add cheddar cheese in it. And I'm gonna make some cheese biscuits for my family. I think they'll like that. If you're using, if you're eating something real savory, like if you're making a pot pie, some people put biscuits on top of their pot pie. If you want to do a more savory recipe and not butter, you can use lard, or I'm not a fan of vegetable shortenings, but I'd rather use, you know, animal fat. Just don't do it right before you get your cholesterol checked. Can y'all see how that, how it's like little bitty pieces of butter? You want a little bit smaller than that. So I just keep chopping. Until I get it all cut up in there. You do want to preheat your oven. It's got to be a hot oven, like 450 degrees. And I use convect. I think my biscuits get more evenly brown when I use the convection setting. All right, that looks good to me. So now we're going to add buttermilk. Now, if you don't have buttermilk, I do use, we drink skim milk, and I have done this many, many times with skim milk. I just take a, I take a cup of milk and I add 1 tablespoon of white vinegar to it, and I let it sit. I actually put the vinegar in the cup, and then I pour my milk up to 1 cup. And that way you're not putting more liquid in it than the recipe calls for. And I just let it sit, and it gives you a good flavor. Your dough will be different. You may need to add a little bit more milk or a little bit less milk, because it just won't be as thick. So let me make sure my oven's on. Okay, so this is buttermilk. It's just 1 cup of buttermilk. I'm gonna pour it in there. This is going to be a very sticky dough. And I use a whole lot of flour when I'm rolling them out, because I want my biscuits to be very distinct layers. I'm just going to incorporate it. Now, you don't want to work your dough till it starts getting real stiff. You just want to incorporate it, because we're going to roll it out. I just kind of mash the milk down in there. Just kind of spread it around till it's all coated. And like I said, it's going to be a little sticky. If you don't have a kitchen scale and you weighed your, and you measured your flour and not weighed it, it may be real dry, because you'll have more flour in there than what I do. So just add a little milk. You just want it to stick together. See how it all just sticks together? That's why I like this bowl. I kind of hold the bowl sideways. I have another bowl that I like, but it makes my hands tired because it's so heavy. So I just use this one. All right. You see how the dough is sticky, but it's all incorporated? It sticks together, but there's no dry pieces. That's what you're wanting. Now comes the fun part. All right, so I take some all-purpose flour, and that was all made with all-purpose flour. I have made this with self-rising flour before, but I don't like it. It makes a softer biscuit, like the dough is softer, and it sticks. It sticks to my surface when I'm trying to roll it out, and it might have been the brand, you know, because it's hard to find the brands you want now. But I just use all-purpose and add. If you're going to use self-rising, do not put the salt, don't put the baking soda or the baking powder in it. Now just turn this out. And talking about not being able to get stuff at the grocery store, I used to be so horrible about not wanting to use enough flour on my surface when I roll them because it will stick so badly. I have got a way around that now. I don't have a Hoosier cabinet to, is that what it's called? To roll my dough out on like our grandmamas had and then save your flour. I'll show you what I do. So I use, like I said, I use a whole lot of flour. If you do not have a rolling pin, you do not have to roll it with a rolling pin. You can just press it out with your hands. And if you don't want a layered biscuit, this is where you're done. You just press it out and cut it. But we're gonna put some layers in here. I take my rolling pin, I put a little flour on it. Now, I don't wash my rolling pin. If you wash a wooden rolling pin, it tends to make the grains raised, and I don't like that. So what I do is I'm try to make it kind of in a rectangle. I just kind of roll it out. And then I'm going to fold it. All right, that makes some layers. Now see where it's stuck? I don't like that. That's why you use a lot of flour, so it won't stick. All right, so that's one layer. I guess that would be 2 layers, a top and a bottom. So I'll just kind of square it up and turn it. And then I'm gonna roll it this way. I would probably turn and fold about 6 times. Unless you want really thin layers, then you can do it as many times as you want to. If you don't have a rolling pin, you could use a glass. I'd get a thick one. Don't cut yourself. Anything you really have around the house. Turn it. Keep putting those layers in it. Put as many as you want to. When I get done, I just scrape my rolling pin off, and it has like a little bitty layer of flour on it. You can put it in a pillowcase or a bag, if you've got a little cloth bag. You'll notice your dough starts getting a little bit more firm. And you see where I didn't make it quite rectangle, but that is perfectly fine. And if anybody's got any ideas on how to keep from having an ugly biscuit, I've been trying to think of a name to call the ugly biscuit. I don't know what y'all call it, but the ugly biscuit's the last biscuit that you make with your dough. I don't think there's any way around it. I've tried rolling it back out and making it its own little thing, but now I'm gonna roll it this way because that's all the layers I'm gonna put in mine. My dough's getting real firm, and the more you work your dough, the more firm of a biscuit you'll have, and I wanna try to keep it a little soft. You just do it the way you like. All right. So I used to use an egg ring to cut out my biscuits, but I finally got me a biscuit cutter. And this one is 3 1/4 inches or 8 centimeters. Cut them out the size you want them. The cheese biscuits that I'm making this afternoon, or I guess this morning sometime, I'm gonna make them smaller. I've got a smaller cutter. This came in a set. I think I can put a link on there on how to find them. People tell me all the time like their grandmama used a glass or something in the kitchen, but I can't get them out if I can't put my finger down and push them through it. So I just put them on the skillet. They don't necessarily have to touch. Now this is when it becomes a little tricky because it makes an ugly biscuit. And I'm never consistent on how many actual biscuits I get. It looks like I'm gonna have 2 ugly biscuits. I've tried rolling these out. I have stone countertops, and I've tried rolling out on stone, and the wood on this is so much better. It just does not stick. Josh Prettyman made this butcher block for me. He did a really good job, and it's a little shorter than a regular countertop because I'm a little shorter than the average person. All right, this is the ugly biscuit. So I just take my dough that's left over, and I have tried rolling this, y'all. I have tried. Let's see if I can do it so I can show you. It never works out like I want it to. It's just gonna have to be what it is. I have tried poking it down in this thing, and it just, see, that's gonna be the ugly biscuit. It's gonna have like bulges in it. We're gonna put that in the middle. And let's see, I'm gonna show you how I treat my rolling pin too while we're right here, and what to do with all this flour. I just scrape my rolling pin off. I also have one of those, like a Pampered Chef plastic scraper. I will scrape it with that. Make sure I get all those little bits of dough off. And then this is how I fix my flour. I washed this thing really good and my hands before I started. I keep food grade oil on it. And I have used this butcher block. I like it a bunch. It's really heavy, so when I'm rolling stuff out, it doesn't move. This is a cookie spatula. We call them flappers more than anything, but it's really, really thin. I mean, it is tiny, tiny thin, and so useful. So I just take my sifter, my strainer, and I put it right there. And I get all this flour and I save it. When there was no flour on the shelf, it really bothered me. And I just put it right there and I sift the dough out of it. And that's good for my next batch. So once these biscuits get ready, I'll show you what they look like.